Hey, good morning, my people. What's up? Hope and trust that all is going good. Today is what? Thursday, the 27th day of August, 2026. And we're not going to tell you the time now for security reasons, but it is Thursday, the 27th of August, 2026. Well, I had the opportunity to review the recording of the press conference that was held by APUA yesterday. Yesterday, what? Being Wednesday. And as I said in a previous recording, I knew that they would have been laying the blame, if you want to put it that way, for most of the economic problems at the feet of the ongoing war, that what is presently ongoing between the United States and Iran, and the situation in the Hormuz Strait, or the Strait of Hormuz. That is a fact. If you follow the international news, you will see exactly what's happening. Um, I think it might have been going on now for that war starting in February, if I'm not mistaken. I agree that APUA have to operate in a way that it has to, it has to operate in a way where it can pay its bills, where it can pay its expenses. It has salaries and wages to pay. So I accept that APUA must be run in a way that it can pay its expenses. But um, for agents of APUA to behave as if APUA financial woes began with what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz presently. As Lester Bird would have said, give me an aspirin. Give me an aspirin. As you can see there from the backdrop, there was a lady who is the acting financial manager, I think it is. The other guy there, he is, I think he might be the acting CEO. I was wondering what happened to Bradshaw. I need to follow that up and see what's happening there. But he's the acting CEO, the minister, Melford that is, and the electricity manager. If I'm not mistaken, I think the guy's name is Matthias, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the first name, but those were the ones there, as you see on the podium. Firstly, I heard the electricity manager. That's the guy in the orange shirt or whatever that color is on the end, right? I heard him spoke about the LNG plant contract slash agreement that was entered into with a particular family. He spoke about that. I can remember as he was speaking, my memory was jolted. Around a time when Minister Mulvin Joseph and might have been the lady Blacklane, Ambassador Blacklane, had gone to cabinet in relation to renewable energy and that kind of stuff. And APA was also there. And they were supposed to present their proposals, APA and this group, minister and the lady, for where and how they were going to go forward. Cabinet is going to go forward. That jumped at me at the time, and when I heard him talking, it ran back to my mind. So I went looking, and I came upon a cabinet notes dating back to the 6th of November 2020. And it's a short thing. I think it's important that I read it. APURA prefers clean energy plants over solar and wind until the cost of batteries goes down. That's what it's captioned. APURA prefers clean energy plants over solar and wind until the cost of batteries goes down. As I said, it's November the 6th, 2020, and it's from the cabinet notes. 10 experts, including 3 managers from APA, 3 officials from the Ministry of Environment, 2 officials from the Ministry of Energy, and 2 from a solar power company contracted by the GCF. GCF appeared before the cabinet to address the issue of green energy. The head of the solar company urged the transition away from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, citing successes in several Caribbean islands where the transition has begun. The APA would prefer to purchase additional energy plants that rely upon LNG, which fuel is cleaner than the bunker C fuel now being utilized and more reliable than solar and wind. The Ministry of Energy sought to have the cabinet move slowly to integrate green energy into the mix of energy sources and to await the time when the cost of batteries fall. That is the Ministry of Energy, right? Batteries store energy for the time when the sun does not shine and the wind does not blow and are costly but declining in price. The Department of Environment is of the view that it would be best to expand the energy supply by integrating wind and solar rather than add more fossil fuel to the mix. In order to reconcile these desperate views, the cabinet appointed Minister Sir Malwin Joseph to bring the parties together and to present to cabinet next week a short paper that will spell out the energy policy which the cabinet could adopt to serve the consumers of Antigua and Barbuda. And they went on a little bit there about Barbuda, blah, 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 blah. So I remember that because when I heard it, I wanted to follow up what would have happened because there were certain discussions in the public at the time as to whether or not the environment department was going to win out or whether or not a particular family was going to win out. And as I said, there was some discussion on the ground for those of us who follow these things. I didn't hear nothing. He said a week, and I kept checking. I didn't hear nothing, and then I asked the question, or it was announced that the decision was made to go with the LNG plant. And when I asked the question to a few people, they told me the batteries on what environment was going on. The batteries were very expensive, and the government could not deal with that at the present time, and blah 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 blah. So again, as I said, as I heard the electricity manager talking, my mind ran back to that. I'm not gonna say too much more on that, but there's a lot to say about certain things on the ground when you listen to certain things. But I'll leave that there for now. No, I've been following APUE, both from the water side and electricity side, for a long time. When I was in radio, you have to do these things so you know what you're talking about. And I heard in this press conference, the minister said that Antigua needs around or runs at around 67 megawatts at peak time. That would have been an increase from what I would have heard some time ago, where it was 60 or 61, 67 megawatts from what I heard on the recording. And the breakdown that I had, well, and I'm going to do it two ways. Because if I understood what the manager was saying, is that they would want to have basically 100% in addition to what gensets they were using. So that if you have to take out the genset, you have fallback. That is what I understood him to say. I don't know if I'm understanding him correctly, but that is what I understood him to say. And why that jumped at me when I heard him say that, when the issue with the LNG plant came about, again, as I said, I know there was discussion, and when you would have added in what the government was saying at the time in relation to renewable energy, there were people who believed that we would have been paying or we would have entered into an agreement to pay for a plant that would basically be a backup. I remember that discussion at the time. So I started to keep some information, and I'm going to do it in two ways. Why I'm going to do it in two ways is this way. We were told that APC was operating Black Pine, and Black Pine was a 27 megawatt plant that should have been coming back to APUA sometime in the past. I'm not sure if it was done already, or I think it was done. And then there was some articles saying that basically that plant the engines was almost dead. I'm not sure if it is still is in operation, if it is still giving APS giving us 27 megawatts. So I'll keep that in the equation for now. And we would have known that the um the APC gensets that eventually had gone to the Privy Council and blah blah blah. There would have been a total of 50 megawatts. 17 we got first, and then 33. And the first one, the 15, the one for 2017 around work up time, I think that was for 15 years, starting in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And the other one was also for 15 years, but there was some level of adjustment to take into consideration the Privy Council ruling, what damages, etc., was awarded. There was some adjustment. And the notes that I have is that the period of time, the 15 years that was initially there, was adjusted and should come to an end around about 2037. That's the information that I have, that I made, the notes that I made then. So you would have 27, 17, and 33, or 27 and 50. That would be 77. And then take into consideration that there was much talk that the government was having around the election time about renewable energy. They were going to be producing X amount. I don't remember what the figure was. I think I had in my mind around 10 megawatts. There was a solar farm out at Bethesda and one going up to the airport. Those are the two that I'm aware of. I don't think that those are working now, stand to be corrected. So I don't know if we're getting anything from that. And there was some issue with them, with some man. I think the man was from England or something like that. Some man and them, and blah 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 blah. And then we went into the deal with the LNG, as I said, which, according to my notes, is a 40 megawatt plant. It's a 25-year arrangement that was set up, and that comes to an end in 2048. That's the notes that I took. So when you put all of that together, 27 megawatts from Black Pines, 50 from APC, the two of them, and the 40 from the LNG plant, um, I'm gonna go zero for renewable energy because I'm not sure that those things are working. You're up to 117 megawatts. Remember, as I said, Melfa said in the recording that we need 67 at peak, 67 megawatts at peak. Let me go the other way now, where if the Black Pine genset is out of circulation, we're getting nothing from that. It would then become 17 or 50 from APC, the 17 and 33, and the 40 from the LNG, and I have a question mark beside it, right? Which would be 90 megawatts. That is zero from Black Pine and zero from renewable energy. I did hear the gentleman say that they were talking to some contractor or something about reviving the stuff in them, and I think he said also they were going to be doing something, or they were thinking of doing something up at the Survivor Stadium, and we have to smile. Remember, they said that they got some wind things, that windmill thing. I think they said they had them up Crabs area, run by Defense Force area. I think they're trying to. Oh, he said that they were going to try to revive that. Um, what I think he said, and I stand to be corrected. I think I heard him correctly, is that it might have been a 5 megawatt project, but they won't get 5 megawatt from it if they go about getting it in order. So I don't know if that's cost effective. The accountants will tell us. But the second example that I have here would be the 50 from APC, the 40 from the LNG plant. That would give us a total of 90. I doubt it if we're getting 40 from the from the LNG plant. That according to my notes again, I think that should have come online 2 or 3 years ago, but there was some issue in relation to dredging the channel up there. And from what school children have been saying, there has been much financial challenges to get that done. That too, in terms of the dredging of that channel up there, or whatever it is, was placed on APUA, and finances was an issue there also for that. There's a discussion as to whether or not if that cost should have been shared by the people and them who the ship is going, the ship will be taking the fuel to, etc. But I'm just saying, those are discussions out here for those of us who follow it. So when I heard the gentleman said, we might need to purchase more power. That's my understanding what he said, because you would want to have in abundance basically 100% of what you have running, so that if you have to take out the genset for maintenance purposes, you would fall back to that. It would mean that, well, let me not say it would mean that. My understanding of what he was saying is that they wanted to make up that difference in the renewable energy side of things. That's my understanding. Um, if I'm understanding that correctly, taking into this taking into consideration how long we've been hearing about this renewable thing. And as I said, that's why I went back and looked for the notes. This was in 2020, so this is 6 years ago, right? This is 6 years ago. And if APOA still maintains the position that the cost of the batteries are too much, so you would have to know either APOA is going to have to purchase additional plants, or they're going to have to enter into arrangement with private people again. Let us just watch that and see where that goes. But I found that interesting. Now, an interesting question was posed to the acting financial manager. I hope that's the position. The lady on the end over there. I'm trying to remember her name. I don't remember the name offhand. But a gentleman posed a question to her that I found to be quite an interesting one. The gentleman's question was: we obviously have a debt to West Indies Oil because of the subsidies that have been given to the general public. And also, how has the amnesty played into that debt as well? Because given that people were able to clear off to some degree a level of their owings to APOA, has that as well contributed to the rise in debt that the authority has? So the gentleman who asked the question obviously remembered that maybe over the last two election cycles, amnesty was given at APOA by the government at APOA over the last two election cycles, I believe. So when I heard the question, I smiled, and then the lady answered. So if I'm understanding you clearly, you're asking the impact of the amnesty on our finances. Gentleman replied, "Yes." Now hear the answer. Okay. Hmm. Okay. So we would have had quite a bit of customers coming in to take advantage of the amnesty that was offered. In most cases, we there were debts that were old, very old on our books, past the collectible stage. And in some instances, the services weren't active. So folks were just trying to get their their names, cleared from a debt, for the most part. So while we had quite an influx of customers, and we did write off, um, it was to the tune of a couple of millions. The debt was really old. The majority of the debt was uncollectible. I read it that she said. you can go back and listen to it yourself. As a matter of fact, if you want to go back and listen to it, do I have that thing still up? Where is it? Where is it? I was just trying to give it a timestamp in so it would make it easy for you. Okay, no, I took down that already. I don't have it. I'll have to go back to it. I counted 11 arms. 11 arms. I never heard. As I was laughing to myself, I can remember one politician, a male, when he talked when he was in government, he spoke with a lot of arms. So, okay, but that was her answer. Um, I- a few parts in it jumped at me. In her answer, jumped at me. When we started talking, like sorry about that. She said, and in some cases, the services weren't active. In some cases, the services weren't active. So then, if I'm understanding her correctly, in some cases, the amnesty was put to some services that was active. I wonder who those persons were. I wonder if those are business people or maybe hotels and that kind of stuff. Because that's what she said. She said in some instances, the services weren't active. So they cut off. So if beef may get cut off, beef went in and got the amnesty, they wipe off how much beef would have owed, and beef can reapply for the service. That's my understanding of it. So if she says that some persons or businesses who benefited from the amnesty were active, it would mean that these people would have been enjoying the services and still owe. And then their accounts would have been wiped. That's my understanding of what she's saying. She can come and tell the public if that's not the case. But that's my understanding of it. And the other part that jumped at me is where she said, so while we had quite an influx of customers and we did write off, um, it was to the tune of a couple of million. A couple of million. The debt was really old, and the majority of the debt was uncollectible. No, I am not an accountant. I mean, be a fraud like the one who does be an accountant and he just has a certificate. I'm not an accountant, so I'll take guidance from the accountant here. But if you're carrying debts on your books that are uncollectible and they're written off, and they're written off when it comes to a particular point. So if they're written off when it comes to a particular point, or if you still have them, you're still carrying them on your books. They're still deemed to be uncollectible when you're carrying them on your books. Some accountant can help me out there. Some accountant can help me out there in the comments. As I said, I'm not an accountant, but from the little I me know, you can't come and tell me, well, we just, waived a couple millions of dollars, but they were real old and they were uncollectible. So what make you kind of my books? Maybe I have it wrong. I stand to be corrected. Uh the news now I would have heard last night that the US Navy will be deploying its aircraft carrier, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, to the Middle East in the coming weeks. And it is expected that it will be deployed for between 7 and 8 months. Um, oh, they boy, them go to arm again like the lady. The Theodore Roosevelt, I think it is going to be replacing. I believe it would be the George Bush, because the George Bush went in there last, and the George Washington recently relieved the Abraham Lincoln. who was at sea for some 250 consecutive days. They say some people, some of the sailors in them may want to jump overboard, etc. They were at sea for so long. So the George Washington replaced the Abraham Lincoln a few days, a week or two, if it's so long. And I heard on the news that the Theodore Roosevelt should be rotating in a few weeks' time. They say, for security reasons, I'm going to give you the timeline like that. But that I believe would be relieving the Bush, who would have been there for some time. And again, as the news said, it is going to be a 7-8 month minimum deployment. So that tells me that the situation in the Middle East should take us into the first quarter of 2027, next year, or February, March, thereabout. So if that is true, and APUA would have come to us to tell us they could not pass on the whole fuel variation, blah, 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 blah. They can't do it no longer because of blah, 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 blah. It tells me that when the increase comes, and I suspect it's coming very, very soon, it will be with us for a while. Because you see, they come and they speak glibly. As I listened and I read a story that they say, oh, as things happen in the international arena, it will blah blah blah. To me, glibly, I would say almost giving the impression that this is a short-term thing. Well, based on what I'm reading, if what happens in the Hormuz Straits is happening in the Hormuz Straits goes into next year, it means that there's something coming to us between now and next year here. And as the gas price goes up, everything else going up with it. I would have read a few days ago, the bus association people, I think, was asking for an increase. I saw a gentleman there saying that they should have some discussion before that, but I don't know that he was with the bus association. I thought he was with the taxi association. So I don't know if that goes to the taxis also. But we all should know that as gas prices go up, everything go up along with that. I haven't heard the discussion as yet as to gas at the pump, but I suspect that is not too far behind. I suspect that is not too far behind. God really moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. So I will listen and sit back and hear the blame that's going to be put to the UPP. Yeah, the blame is going to be put to the UPP because in some person's eyes, the UPP have been running this country for the last 10 years. And as I said, as Celeste Bird would say, when I hear them people talk, I just say, give me an aspirin. Give me an aspirin. So, yes, what would have happened? There's certain things that are out of our control. That is true. And I'm not going to fight that. That is true. But for the things that are within our controls, how good have we dealt with them? The lady said a few millions. What is the few millions? Is a few millions 2 million? Or was it 7 million? What is the few millions? I don't know if anybody have ever heard of any report of what the value of it was, but I will surely be interested to know. Until we come together again, my people, have a nice day today. Keep safe, and may God go with all of us as we go into this new day. Bless up.